A mochi moment from Mark, who writes, I just want to thank you for making GLP-1s affordable. What would have been over $1,000 a month is just $99 a month with Mochi. Money shouldn't be a barrier to healthy weight. 3 months in, and I have smaller jeans and a bigger wallet. You're the best. Thanks, Mark. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Mark is a Mochi member compensated for his story.
This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Shopify. Starting a business is filled with a lot of what-ifs. What if I fail? What if nobody listens to the podcast? What if nobody cares? It can definitely be hard to get over that doubt and uncertainty, but making that leap was one of the best things I've ever done, and it's great to know that I'm not alone with a business partner like Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Heinz and Mattel to brands just getting started. And I'm telling you, their tools really do feel like you have a business partner. They have hundreds of ready-to-use templates to help build a beautiful online store that matches your brand. You can also get the word out like you have an entire marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And if you get stuck, Shopify is always there to help with their award-winning 24/7 customer service. It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/justice. Go to shopify.com/justice. That's shopify.com/justice.
Voices for Justice is a podcast that uses adult language and discusses sensitive and potentially triggering topics, including violence, abuse, and murder. This podcast may not be appropriate for younger audiences. All parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Some names have been changed or omitted per their request or for safety purposes. Listener discretion is advised.
My name is Sarah Turney, and this is Voices for Justice. Today, I'm discussing the case of Brandon Swanson. Brandon's case has been immortalized across true crime entertainment, specifically on podcasts and YouTube. It's one of those cases where the circumstances are just extremely odd. A 19-year-old crashes his car while driving home from a party. He thinks he knows where he is. He calls his parents, and they jump in their truck to go get him. But before they can get there, Brandon's already gone. Theories about what may have happened to Brandon range from foul play to an alien encounter and everything in between. So let's cut through the noise, focus on the facts, including the most recent updates in the case, and see what we can do to help. This is the case of Brandon Swanson. Brandon was born on January 30th, 1989 in Marshall, Minnesota, to his parents Brian and Annette Swanson. His sister was born a few years later, making them a family of 4. They stayed in Marshall. It's a relatively small town in Lyon County, and about 150 miles southwest of Minneapolis. At the time that Brandon went missing, it had a population of about 13,000, and they haven't grown much since then. It's really known for being home to the Schwann Food Company, which employs about 10% of the town. But from what I could find, it's just a really rural area with a lot of farmland. Brandon got a job at a local food store at an early age and graduated from Marshall High School in 2007. He then enrolled at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in nearby Canby, where he studied wind energy for 1 year. But Brandon made a big decision, probably the biggest one of his entire life. He decided to leave Marshall and transfer to Western Community College in Council Bluffs, Iowa. There, he'd continue his studies in science. While this new school was only about 4 hours away, it would be the first time he'd ever lived outside of Minnesota. It was a big deal, and he wanted to celebrate. After Brandon finished up his last classes for the year on Tuesday, May 13th, 2008, he decided to go out and make sure that he was able to say goodbye to some friends before making the move. It's unclear exactly what time he leaves his house, but he tells his mom goodbye and he heads to nearby Lind, Minnesota, which is about 7 miles away. Now, despite being only 19 years old, he does have some drinks and visits some friends before leaving for another party in Canby. This is 35 miles northwest of his home. Here, he again has some drinks and says goodbye to a friend from school. This is really a long day for Brandon, even for a 19-year-old. He had classes that morning, and by 1 a.m., he's kind of ready to call it a night. He heads back home to Marshall. We do know that he'd been drinking, but his friends report that he was not intoxicated. So take that for what you will. For whatever reason, possibly to stay off the main roads because he'd been drinking, Brandon decides to take the back roads home instead of his regular commute along Highway 68. That's usually how he'd get from Canby, where he went to school, to his home in Marshall. But along the way, Brandon veers off the gravel road and gets his Chevy Lumina stuck in a ditch. Now, he does have a cell phone, and according to some reporting I found, he tries to call his friends for help, but they don't answer. So he calls his parents at 1:54 a.m. He tells them that he's fine, but his car is stuck in a ditch and he's gonna need some help, either to get it out or at least get a ride home until he can call a tow truck later in the day. We are now into the early hours of Wednesday. He tells his parents that he's near Lind, about 10 minutes from their home in Marshall. So they hop in their truck to help while staying on the phone with him. But when they get to where Brandon says he is, they don't see him or his car anywhere. This is a very rural area without lights, and really without a lot of traffic. So Brian and Annette Swanson turn around and begin flashing the lights on their truck, and ask Brandon if he can see them. He says no. So Brandon tries flashing the headlights on his car. His mom can hear the clicking of the lights over the phone, but they don't see him either. Brandon's father, Brian, says that his son was extremely confident that he knew exactly where he was. So his parents assume that they're in the wrong spot. And really at this point, everyone is getting frustrated. Brandon even hangs up on them, but his mom calls right back and apologizes and just tries to figure out where he is. So really at this point, Brandon just says, you know what, I can see the city lights of Lind, I'm just gonna start walking towards town and I'll meet you there. And really as he's walking, he begins describing his surroundings to his parents. He's near fencing, and he can hear water. But then Brandon yells, "Oh shit," and the phone goes silent. His parents stay on the line calling out his name, but Brandon never responds. They eventually hang up and try calling back. It's the middle of the night, about 3 a.m. now. It's dark out. They're hoping that Brandon just dropped his phone and that he'll be able to see the lights when they keep calling him back. But they call and they call about 5 or 6 times. And the phone does ring, but there's no answer. They get his voicemail every time. Annette and Brandon Swanson figure that he must have just gotten lost in the dark. So they call up his friends to help look for him. They spend about 3 hours driving up and down every road in the area, driving through farmland, but they don't see Brandon or his car anywhere. So at 6:30 a.m., they decide that they've done all they can do and that it's time to call it in and report Brandon missing. This episode of Voices for Justice is brought to you by Quince. I've been trying to be more intentional about what I wear each day. I'm leaning into pieces that feel effortless, comfortable, and still put together, and Quince has been my go-to. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are flattering, and everything just works without overthinking it. They use premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, and ultra-soft denim. And the best part? Everything is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality and craftsmanship, not brand markup. I recently just ordered their tiered linen dress, of course in black. I wanted to pair it with one of my favorite pairs of brown wedges. The problem was, I didn't have a brown purse. So I got that from Quince too. It's one of my favorite outfits. It's easy, effortless, and feels amazing, especially as we're getting a little bit warmer here in Phoenix. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/justice for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/justice for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/justice.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today and let us surprise you.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
When Brian and Annette Swanson report their son Brandon missing to the Lind Police Department, the responding officer isn't exactly concerned. They say, listen, he's 19. It's the end of the school year, he was out drinking, he's probably just out partying, or maybe he fell asleep somewhere. They also say something that Annette Swanson says stuck with her, that Brandon had a right to be missing. But his parents push back. They say there's just no way. Yes, Brandon was drinking underage, but he called them for a reason. He wasn't trying to hide anything. He was asking for help. They also say that he sounded completely coherent. Not to mention, really the most important factor in my opinion, the way their phone call ended was extremely concerning. Obviously something happened, and Brandon could be in really serious trouble. After a little bit of back and forth, the Lind PD does begin to help search the area for Brandon. But just like his parents and just like his friends, they don't find anything. But they do get help from the Lyon County Sheriff's Office, who's able to get records of Brandon's last call pretty quickly. They discover that his phone pinged off a cell tower 20 minutes from where he told his parents he was. Using that information, by the afternoon, they find Brandon's car. It's stuck in a ditch, just like he described. There's no damage to the vehicle, but the doors were open and his keys were gone. But none of this really surprised investigators or Brandon's parents. They figure someone must have just come along to investigate the vehicle and left the doors open. Though, of course, we can't say for sure. What was surprising, though, was its location. It was nowhere near where Brandon says he was when he was on the phone with his parents. He wasn't near Lind. His green Chevy Lumina was found along the 3900 block of Lyon Lincoln Road, closer to a city called Taunton, about 25 miles from where he thought he was. Lyon County Sheriff Eric Wallen told the Grand Forks Herald, quote, "The vehicle simply looked like it was stuck in the ditch, or partially in the ditch. There was nothing odd about it. If a person passed by, they would think it was just parked there, or broken down and stuck." End quote. They search the immediate area, but don't find any trace of Brandon anywhere. No tracks in the gravel, no tracks in the grass in the ditch, not a piece of clothing, his cell phone. There's nothing. So they do the only thing they really can do at this point. They begin organizing a larger search, but that turns up empty too. So law enforcement and Brandon's family begin organizing more searches using more equipment and resources. They bring out hundreds of volunteers. There are people on horseback and ATVs. They get aerial support. They bring out teams of dogs to try to track Brandon's scent. And they do. According to reporting by Alexis Weed for CNN, a team of dogs brought investigators to the woods near the bank of Yellow Medicine River, about 3 miles from where Brandon's car was found. At the time, the river was about 15 feet deep and moving very quickly. So investigators narrow their focus on the river. They figure maybe he just got lost and fell in, that maybe when he screamed, "Oh shit," that was his phone falling in the river. Maybe Brandon fell in trying to retrieve it. I mean, obviously everything right now is really just a shot in the dark. They're exploring any possibility they can to find him. So they sweep the river, they install gates, they use underwater sonar, and Lincoln County Sheriff Jack Fizecki personally walked it every single day for 30 days. And I hate that I keep having to say it, but there was absolutely no trace of Brandon. Not even a scrap of clothing. But that's not the only location that the dogs tracked his scent to. Annette Swanson says that one bloodhound followed his scent from Brandon's car to an abandoned farm as well. She also told Weed, quote, "It was a long trail, about 3 miles. The dog actually jumped in the river, jumped back out, worked the trail up to another gravel road, and then lost the scent." End quote. So it seems that there are a few different areas where these dogs seem to be losing Brandon's scent, which, as much as we love dogs, we know that it's just not a perfect science. In the end, Annette outright says that there's nothing to say that Brandon fell in the river, and neither she nor law enforcement are convinced that he drowned, especially considering the massive efforts to search the river. In fact, they don't really understand why literally nothing of Brandon's has ever been recovered, or why when they brought the dogs back, they couldn't pick up Brandon's scent again. By fall, emergency support services took over the search efforts for Brandon, and they say that their largest issue is landowner permission. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of farmland in this area, and not everyone was on board with letting hundreds of volunteers search their land, or just taking the risk of harming their crops. But it's fall now, and most of the crops like corn and soybeans have been harvested. They search more, but again come up with nothing. After numerous searches over several years encompassing a 140 square mile area, not a single trace of Brandon Swanson has ever been found. Now, this is usually the part of the episode where I talk about search efforts ending and the investigation ramping up. But there's just not much there. Investigators haven't ruled out foul play, but there's nothing to really point them in that direction either. The Grand Forks Herald briefly mentions a possible argument that Brandon may have gotten into on the night he went missing, but that doesn't seem to be confirmed, or if it was, it didn't go anywhere. Law enforcement is pretty vague on this one, but Lyon County Sheriff Eric Wallen said, quote, "It seems that every tip we receive, we investigate, and we run into a dead end. It was either false or the information wasn't accurate. They all seem to run into a dead end." End quote. This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Chewy. If you have pets, you probably know about Chewy, and you also know that when they say that they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, they're not messing around. To keep them happy, Chewy has over 100,000 products from all the brands my pets love at prices I love. To keep them healthy, Chewy offers pet prescriptions, pet insurance, telehealth vet visits, and they're even rolling out vet clinics across the country. I've been shopping with them for a very long time. And in addition to the auto ship feature that gets the dog's food to them every single month, I also love to experiment with different treats. But I'm a bit picky. For me, it has to be high quality with simple ingredients. I recently picked up treats from Shepherd Boy Farms that are 100% just chicken breast. Popcorn and Heber are already obsessed. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewpanions.chewy.com/SarahETurney. That's chewpanions.chewy.com/SarahETurney to save $20 on your first order with free shipping. chewpanions.chewy.com/SarahETurney. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details.
What they did to your family, you're lucky to make it out alive.
Streaming on Peacock.
These men are going to come after me. Taking them out is my only chance.
Put a bullet in her head.
From the co-creator of Ozark.
Looks like a family was running drugs.
Execution-style killing, it's rare for the Keys. And it leads on who they might have been running for.
The cartel killed my family. I'm gonna kill them. All of them.
MIA. Streaming now. Only on Peacock.
So what happened to Brandon Swanson? Well, like I said at the top of this episode, the number of theories that have been presented are seemingly endless. Brandon's case got a lot of attention during the golden age of conspiracy theories on YouTube. And while many of those videos have since been removed, I remember seeing basically everything under the sun suggested. Bigfoot, aliens, Brandon driving through a portal to another dimension. So let's stick with what we know. Brandon's parents believe it's very likely that he got confused while trying to make his way to what he thought was the city of Lind that morning. It was extremely dark, and I think it's worth noting that Brandon is legally blind in one eye. They've said a few times that they think his remains are likely somewhere along the river and just haven't been found. Again, foul play is an option, which again opens us up to endless theories. Could he have trespassed on someone's land? Could he have just been in the wrong place at the wrong time? Maybe he did make it to whatever lights he was seeing. But authorities say that there's no evidence of foul play. They also say that there's no evidence that he left on his own accord. I think the largest loose end in Brandon's case is that not all of the land in the area has been searched. In my opinion, the theory that Brandon died as the result of a tragic accident makes a lot of sense. He could have fallen into the river, gotten himself out, and then succumbed to hypothermia. He could have gotten injured somehow. He could have been attacked by an animal. Again, like the other theories, I think the accident theory has a seemingly endless amount of possibilities. Again, especially given that there are still areas that have not been searched. In 2021, Emergency Support Services said exactly this. There are still areas that they'd like to search if they can get permission from local cattle farmers. And they're dedicated to continuing to work on a solution to make searching agreeable for these landowners. However, they don't really seem to have a lot of support with this initiative. Yellow Medicine County Sheriff Bill Flatten says that these people know their land and that they've searched independently. He says there's just no probable cause for law enforcement to get search warrants. So unfortunately, that pretty much is where Brandon's case is today. In 2009, Brandon's parents fought to pass Brandon's Law. This requires law enforcement in Minnesota to immediately take a missing persons report and investigate regardless of the person's age if they're reported missing under suspicious circumstances. This law directly led to the recovery of a man named Leroy Smith, who went missing from Winona, Minnesota in 2009. Investigators began searching immediately, and he was found a week later. While this is a bright, shining light in Brandon's case, his family admits that they have little hope that Brandon will be found. While speaking with her daughter, Annette Swanson said that she wasn't sure Brandon would be found in her lifetime. And Brandon's sister responded that she wasn't sure he'd be found in her lifetime either. Regardless, as of 2015, they still keep their porch light on for Brandon, just like they did on the night he went missing. And Annette Swanson doesn't want Brandon to be forgotten. Quote, "I want people to remember Brandon, talk about Brandon. Brandon is a real person. He touched a lot of lives, and don't forget him." End quote. That brings me right to our call to action. In a lot of episodes, I've asked you to have hope for answers because the family has hope for answers. But I can tell you firsthand that sometimes that hope is extremely difficult to hold in your heart, especially after so much time has passed. So I thought maybe we could be the hope. In the fall of 2021, the Yellow Medicine River dried up due to drought. The Lyon County Sheriff's Office brought out excavators to search for anything related to Brandon's case. Unfortunately, like the countless searches conducted before this one, they didn't find anything. But Brandon's case is still active and open. As of recording this episode, it's been 16 years since he went missing. And they're still searching, still trying to find solutions to searching these areas they've never had access to. Please share Brandon's story. It could reach the next generation of landowners, or someone who happens to be in the area as the land and river continues to change. Let's try to be the hope. Please share. As a reminder, Brandon Swanson was 19 years old when he went missing from Marshall, Minnesota on May 14, 2008. He is white with brown hair and blue eyes. At the time of his disappearance, he was 5'6" and weighed 120 pounds. He was last seen wearing baggy blue jeans, a blue striped polo shirt, a black hooded zip front sweatshirt with an emblem on the back, and a white Minnesota Twins baseball cap. He was also wearing glasses and a sterling silver chain. Both of his ears are pierced. His keys, clothing, cell phone, and eyeglasses have yet to be recovered. Anyone with information about Brandon's case is asked to call the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department at 507-694-1664. But as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time. Voices for Justice is hosted and produced by me, Sarah Turney, and is a Voices for Justice media original. If you love what we do here, please don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show in your podcast player. It's an easy and free way to help us and help more people find these cases in need of justice. Welcome to the Secret After Show. The studio door is open and our emotional support puppy is in the room. As far as what's going on with me, I did upload a new episode of Dark Truth, The Death of Edgar Allan Poe. So if you're interested in learning about the extremely weird circumstances around his death, not so much about his life, I think that, most of us have a pretty good understanding of his life. I go much more into his death and all the craziness that surrounded that over on Patreon. I also want to give you a little sneak preview of what I'm working on over the holidays for Dark Truth. I want to dive deep into Boeing. Right during the holiday travel season, I am a paranoid traveler and I've been hearing the stories about Boeing, so I decided to begin researching it, and you guys, it's scary. It's probably going to be one of the scariest Dark Truths I put out there, but I think it's important for people to know. And I'm sorry to scare you. I really am. But what is going on with Boeing? I'm going to figure it out. Other than that, 2 weeks in a row, wow, I'm on a streak, you guys. I have another documentary recommendation for you, and it touches on true crime. But I watched Martha, the documentary about Martha Stewart, and I thought it was fantastic. It actually was extremely inspiring to me, like business-wise and boss lady-wise, and how unapologetic she really is and was, it seems, throughout her entire life for focusing on her career and wanting to grow. Of course, she is not a perfect human. Nobody is saying that by any stretch of the word, including herself, including her daughter, who's featured in the documentary. But I found it quite interesting and inspiring. And if you guys don't know, I actually worked, when I worked for USA Today and I did events and marketing, I worked on the Martha Stewart Wine and Food Tour. So I've actually met Martha Stewart. At one point, she came and was very upset because the music in our tent was too loud. So I've seen her chastise her employees. I have had some exposure to Miss Stewart. Mrs. Stewart? I think it's, well, she's not married anymore. I've had some exposure to Martha Stewart. I have eaten her food backstage. So I have kind of like a vested interest in this documentary. And I have to say that the vibes that we all felt on that tour are exactly what you see in that documentary. I'll never, ever forget. I had the chance, because during the tour, like, of course, I'm working, right? But I had the chance on one of the stops to do her class. Oh, it's been so long. I think it was like 2018. It was like her wine class where she talks about wine and food, and they were like, hey, like, we have an extra seat. There's not much going on. Do you want to go sit in? And I was like, absolutely. And I do. And I remember almost nothing of this experience other than she pulls up, I believe it was her assistant, and she had messed up a brown sugar turkey. It was like putting brown sugar into like a mold of a turkey just for like aesthetics to have on your table. And she pulls up this assistant, and I forget her name. She's like, this is Paige, my assistant who doesn't know how to stuff a brown sugar turkey. And yeah, I was like mortified for her. Like, her assistant was like nervously laughing. It was an experience. It was definitely an experience. But again, everything I experienced on that tour, when I met her, it was all right along there. And when I met her, I like had her, sign the book or whatever. And I was like, I just like really admire your strength. Where do you derive your strength from? And she looks me in the eye and she goes, I'm just strong. And then like looks for the next person. I was like, okay, bye. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting experience. Very interesting woman. Again, not perfect. I'm not defending everything she's ever done. But if you were interested in her life and how that empire was built and how she has continuously evolved herself, check out Martha, the documentary. It's on Netflix. Now let's talk about the case and talk about Brandon. I want to, like, the first thing I want to say about this episode is not what I thought it was going to be. And that's because I remembered Brandon's case from when I had no money, I had no cable, and all I had to watch was YouTube. And yes, I was watching some conspiracy theory videos. I wasn't really into true crime, but I was into like mysterious, disappearances and stuff. I watched a lot about Elisa Lam, which is how I found John Lorden, and he did the first video ever about Alyssa. I didn't have any other resources, and I would go down these rabbit holes of like, why do people disappear and how does this happen? And Brandon Swanson's case was everywhere, absolutely everywhere. All I remembered was like that last call, right? Was that there were all these weird circumstances. He made that last call and like what happened to him and all the crazy conspiracy theories. And I remember these videos being extremely long, multiple parts, multiple hours. And I was like, okay, gotta get ready. This is going to take a long time to research. And it didn't. When I started looking for the facts, there's not a lot out there. There's not a lot of sources that I feel comfortable using on this show to derive my facts from. It just happens that way. There's a lot of blogs. There's a lot of like opinions and theories out there. But when it came to hardcore facts, those were really hard to find. So this episode was shorter than I anticipated. I really thought it would be this super long, deep dive into these facts and what happened, and they're just not out there. Like I was digging through archives, through multiple archives, through every local news site I could find, through a lot of the old news coverage, and it's either just not all there anymore, or perhaps was just flooded with theories from the beginning. And it would have been easy to just be like, okay, this story has like been told a lot. There's not a lot of facts here, but you guys know how I am. I can't look into a case and think about that person in my mind and say, you're not worthy because of A, B, and C. Brandon is missing. It is an unsolved case. I'm going to help. I'm going to cover it. But again, it was really, really shocking to me to go from, I'm going to find hours of content on this, to wow, so much of what is out there is just theory. Which you guys know, I do dabble in theories. I do think that it's important to talk about. I also try to always tell you this is my opinion. This is speculation. And yeah. In terms of media discrepancies, not a lot. There were some on the timeline, but I relied mostly on direct quotes from his mom or dad about those, like specifically the phone call and the timing around that, because they have the phones, they have the phone logs, or at least, their phone, not Brandon's phone. But they were there, they experienced it, they have their phone, they have their logs. It felt like the most reliable source out of everybody. And speaking of his parents, they are our heroes of this episode. And that's for pushing the police, one, and saying, hey, no, we're not going to wait. We're going to look for him because there are some strange circumstances here. Please look. That pushing, number one, is why they're heroes. And number two is making Brandon's Law, which that same year directly led to somebody being brought home safe. I mean, I can't think of anything more heroic than that. I always think it's a really beautiful and special thing when families in true crime, people who have been impacted by violent crime, turn it into something positive despite feeling not so positive, which again was clear when you read the reporting about this case. His parents, it was just one of those cases where it just breaks your heart as you progressively read over the time as they just like lose hope. But again, they are our heroes for pushing past that, for making Brandon's Law, for reaching within their hearts to do something to help other cases moving forward. And again, it helped one case, and I'm sure countless others. So Annette and Brandon Swanson, you are our heroes of this episode. I like this transition a lot more, going from heroes to our segment of hope. It just feels right, you guys. I think 4 years later, 5 years later, I finally found the groove, which is ever changing. Thank you for bearing with me. But I don't mind evolving and growing. I think it leads to good things. So let's evolve and grow right to our segment of hope. And this really is also a case update. And this comes from the day this episode airs. This is being recorded in real time for y'all. And I'm reading from fox9.com. This is an update in the Maddie Kingsbury case. Her killer has been found guilty of murder. As a recap, I covered Maddie's case as it was really happening in real time. I saw the case. I wanted to help. I've since, kept in touch with her sister via TikTok. But as you guys might remember, Maddie was reported missing on March 31st, 2023. And all signs did point to her ex-boyfriend who, is the father of her 2 children and the last person to see her alive. It's a really, really sad case. Maddie's body wasn't found for 4 months, but when she was, that ex-boyfriend, who I just don't want to name and give the clout to, was arrested for her murder. And now, my goodness, 18 months or so later, according to this reporting, Fox 9, I want to give credit where credit is due, by Katie Wermis, he was facing 4 murder charges and was found guilty on all counts. This was a 3-week trial, and they finally reached a verdict today. He'll be sentenced on December 17th, so we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. But with 4 counts, I think he's probably going to go away for the rest of his life. This is premeditated first-degree murder, and it does carry a maximum sentence of life in prison. So it's hard, right? I think it makes the segment of hope because it feels like traditional legal justice was served. Of course, that will never bring back these 2 kids' mom. It's so hard to talk about justice and hope, right? Because, when awful things like this happen, justice never, ever, ever, ever feels complete because it should have never happened in the first place. But I will say that there does seem to be some sense of legal justice here, which I have to say does make our segment of hope because not all cases get that. I would also love, if you felt so compelled in your heart, if you would give Maddie's sister Megan a follow on TikTok. She talks about Maddie, she honors her memory, she talks about her life, and I just love to show support to families even after these cases are quote unquote done. So her handle is Meg, MEG, SMPLS. You can also find her under who I'm following on TikTok. But yeah, I would love if you can go show her some love and support. And, please always show these families that just because the case is legally wrapped up, doesn't mean that we forget about their loved ones. But as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time.